Welcome to the Audacious OBM podcast. I'm your host, Leanne, creator of OBM Academy and founder of Audacious Empires. Each week, my crew and I will explore all things building and scaling an exceptional OBM business. This podcast is here to share how you can charge premium prices, have clients lining up to work with you, and never have to work another weekend again. You can have a thriving OBM business working with the clients you want, when you want, and charging the price you want. It's time to banish mediocre and become the standout, sought after OBM you know you can be. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Audacious OBM. I'm Leanne, and today we are talking about flexibility. So, a question I often get asked is, how flexible should I be with my clients? And I believe there are 6 things we need to consider before we say yes or no to requests around being flexible. That's what I want to talk to you about today. So the 6 things are: my number 1 rule for flexibility, what my baseline on making decisions around flexibility is, the benefits of being flexible, the cost of being too flexible, managing requests with integrity, and the final one is sticking to your role. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a framework and a way that you can build in the right level of flexibility to different requests day in and day out. All right, so number 1, my rule in flexibility is my brand is flexible. We are flexible when we can be, and never when we can't be. So I've had situations recently where I'll have my team say to me, how are we going to handle this? Or what do we say? It's not what we would normally do. And this is I go back to my rule. We are flexible when we can be and never when we can't be. And what that means is, as long as we're staying within our role and within our boundaries, but we need to change something to benefit the client and the impact is not astronomical for us, then of course we're going to be flexible. They're not asking for anything that's wildly outlandish. If what they're asking for jeopardizes the project, well then we have to have a stronger conversation about that. If we believe it's unrealistic, if we believe that it is way out of scope, these are all things that make it harder for us to be flexible. And there are just certain things where I'm unwilling to compromise. And so what are those things? Which brings me to my second point. What is your baseline for making decisions around flexibility? For me, this always comes down to values. What do I value and what does that look like? For example, I value people and I value family. And I would never want to jeopardize anyone's people or anyone's family. And so if I had a client who came and said, hey, I really need some more of your help and I think it needs to be in person and I need you to fly across the country once a week on a Wednesday to do this for me. Now, if I match that against my values of family, it doesn't really sit very well, because I know that then every Wednesday I am not going to be able to do my son's homework with him or take him to his activities. And it's something that I really enjoy and he really enjoys, and I think that it brings stability. So asking me to travel across the country once a week, it's actually something I cannot. And I'm not willing to ask myself, my family, or my team or their family to give something like that up, especially if I can find an alternate way to get the same result. Now, does that mean that every time a client asks me for something in terms of I need you to be away from your family, that I'm going to say no? No, it doesn't. Because if my client said to me, hey, I have a really big event coming up, it's in 8 months' time, and it will just make my life so much easier if you're there. Are you able to do this? Then I'm going to talk to my son and say, hey, this 1 week, I'm not going to be there, but it's okay because dad is going to take you. And I'll be back on Monday, and then next week I'll take you again. And I'll sacrifice that little piece for my client because I don't think they're being unreasonable. I don't think the cost of that flexibility is going to have a real impact or jeopardize my values. So that's how I generally will measure things, is what's the actual impact of this? And how much does it matter? And at what level? Because why would we be flexible? If it's only going to cost me and it's not going to do anything for me, well, then why would I do it? And the truth is, I don't think anybody is really that hard or that self-absorbed, but I believe that in most things, there needs to be balance and fairness. If you give a little, you get a little. And you know what I've noticed? If I'm a little bit within reason, flexible with my clients, they're flexible with me. Because at the end of the day, we're all people. And life is never black and white, and neither is business. It's not black and white. It's not repeatable. The scenarios are not guaranteed to happen in the same way every time. And so the sooner that we recognize that, the better it will be for us. Because then when something unexpected happens or someone does request a little bit of consideration and flexibility, we're not surprised and we know how to handle it. So I do think that there is a big benefit in being flexible with consideration. But then what's the flip side? What's the cost of being too flexible? Now, that is one that I think more of us struggle with. We're too flexible and we struggle with boundaries and setting boundaries and keeping boundaries. The cost of that is burnout and being resentful. If we don't keep to our boundaries, if we say yes and then yes again and then yes again, even though we don't want to, even though the things we're being asked are some of those things that we really shouldn't negotiate on, then we're not really living a great business. We're constantly giving everything that matters away and not getting anything in return. And we feel like, yes, I've given you so much, but you can't then expect other people or clients to see that the same way. They've asked you for something, you've said yes, they don't owe you anything for that. It's not like you said to them, okay, this is going to be extremely hard for me and I don't really normally do it, and all of these things, so that they fully understand what they're asking for. If they've just asked you and you said yes and they asked you something else and you say yes, that's on you. And so it's really important that we think things through and that we are flexible when we can be and not when we can't be, so that then we don't end up resentful of things clients never intended to do in the first place, and we don't end up burnt out and unable to work with anybody because we've said yes just too many times. Then We need to be considerate and be quite logical in a business sense when we're managing requests. We need to manage them with integrity. And what I mean by this is we need to come back to what we've offered in the first place and what we've sold. Because if I have said to somebody, yep, I'm going to come in and I'm going to completely overhaul your whole digital ecosystem. I'm going to look at your tech stack. I'm going to look at your marketing. And we're going to come up with the best plan for you and a whole new ecosystem. And then we get into the project and I say to my clients, oh yeah, but I only work with these certain tools, or I'm only going to consider these certain marketing avenues because that's what I'm most comfortable with. Well, that's not really what you've sold the client. You've sold the client an ecosystem that is customized to them, not customized within your small pool. And so in matters like that, it's actually not in integrity for you to say, no, I only work with these things and you'll just have to deal with that because it's not what you sold. But if you do want to operate in a manner that is very clear cut, then you just change your offer and you start saying, hey, I can build you a really great ecosystem that consists of these things. These are the tools that I love. This is how they can work together. It's incredible. I've built something like this many, many times, and this is the outcome I get. There are ways to do it, but you need to position it properly first. Otherwise, you need to be flexible and possibly step out of your comfort zone a little bit. And then the final thing that you need to consider is what your role is and really staying in your role. So as online business managers, we are there to make our clients' lives easier, to make them infinitely better, incredible, to help them reach their goals, to make their dreams come true. They have the vision, we bring it to life. That makes you secondary. This isn't actually all about you. You're a partner in there, but it is not all your way or the highway. And we have to remember our job there is to support another business, to make something else thrive. When you're picking tools or working within tools, you need to be thinking about your client first. And we want our clients to be able to easily interact with us and still get what we need. But at the end of the day, that easy factor needs to be for them first. So for instance, something that happens in my business is we work with a lot of clients and we use all their different systems. And that includes project management systems. So if we're working with operations, generally we're going to be in a client's project management system to manage whatever we're doing and the team. As a result of that, a lot of our activities have to also go into our own project management system. So our business, so that we can see everything that's happening from our brand's perspective and for capacity measurement. And so the impact of that is that things get double handled because we've got to track it for ourselves and then we've got to track it for our clients. And if I was to cut one of those off, it would have to be my own. I would only have it in the client's thing because my job is to support them and not to take a piece of their business away from their business. So their assets, their communication, it should all be within their systems. Because at the end of the day, if I walk away, that plan, it's still theirs. Their team is in there. Their team shouldn't be in your system. And if that means that there's some double handling and overlap in my land, that's for me to resolve. And if I choose to automate that so I don't have to deal with the whole manual entry, fantastic. But it wouldn't be reasonable for me to say to my client, no, you can just go in mine because it'll be easier for me. Because that's not our role. And so when we're looking at being flexible, we also need to come back to that purpose. What are we here for? How are we doing it? Am I honoring that? So I hope that that's giving you some food for thought around how flexible we can be, how flexible we should be. And no, there is no black and white. As much as I would love to give you black and white rules, it's something you do have to figure out, and you have to think about those boundaries and your values and come up with your own little system to manage flexibility, because people will always ask for flexibility because life is just not straightforward. That's all from me for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please give me a 5-star raving review. Otherwise, Sabrina on my team will cry. Thanks so much. See you next week, guys. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of The Audacious OBM. We hope this episode has helped you move forward in your journey to being a standout and sought after OBM. If you enjoyed the episode, take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to help other OBMs just like you. If you're interested in learning more about OBM Academy and all that it offers, head over to audaciousempires.com to get all the juicy details. We'll be back next week.